Good evening, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Pub. It is now, would you believe it, episode 15, of which myself and the rejoining Reece and Jack have now done 14 together since that pilot episode, which feels like a long, long time ago. I'm not going to ask how you are, gents, because we're just about to talk about the current state of our football club. So I think I know the answer to that, and it'll probably be worse by the end of the episode. So in an attempt to rip off the band-aid, let's try and get this over with as quick as possible. 13th of November was the date of the last recording. Since then, the Gills form reads as played 12, won 2, drawn 3, lost 7, scored a paltry 9, conceded 17, and picked up just 9 points at 0.75 points per game, which now sees us sitting, ironically, 17th in League Two, which is a position we finished in 22-23, which seems a long time ago. To split that down a little bit more, gents, obviously there's been 2 managers in them 12 games. Mark Bonner's effort was played 8, won 2, drew 1, lost 5, scored 6, conceded 12. Points per game was 0.88 as he accrued 7. Not really had a manager bounce, have we? John Coleman's no wins, 2 draws and 2 defeats from 4 games, scored 3, of which 2 have been netted by opposition centre-backs, conceded 5. We have 2 points at 0.5 points per game. I want to talk on Mark Bonner first, Jack, so I'll come to you. Before we get on to John Coleman, I think given the nature of the form over Christmas and more pertinently the Bromley defeat, which was for me as bad as I've seen us at home since probably Oxford in the relegation season, it wasn't a surprise that Mark Bonner got the bullet, was it? I mean, we spoke on the last episode and he was starting to tread on somewhat thin ice. It got to the point after Bromley where I think it was probably untenable, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so, mate. It's one of those where if I said this before on social media, but if he wasn't the 3rd manager off the rank, shall we say, then I think he'd have probably been sacked sooner than he was. I feel like they were holding on for as long as possible in the hope that he turned it around. So I understand the reason he's been sacked, and I'm not shocked he has, given the history of what we've done with other managers and the time we've given them, especially with the objectives for this season. That being said, and we're going to cover this, I'm sure, in more depth, and I keep sounding like a broken record, but ultimately, I'm still of the belief it's the players more so than any manager. And you've rightly pointed it out. You know, there's been no manager bounce. There's no shock as to why. Let's be honest. So for me, I think it's one of those where, and I said this on X the other day. If you look at Harris, at Clements, and at Bonner now, anyone who looks at the 3 of them and decides different conclusions, all of them, I feel like they're going a little bit crazy, to be honest. I feel that everything's sort of tied in together. Harris failed broadly because of the players. So did Clements. So did Bonner. They've got their deficiencies as managers. I think Harris is the best of the 3 of them. And he's shown that at Millwall in the time he was there. But ultimately, I think it's down to the players. So for me, I sit here and think it's slightly laughable that he was sacked to make the playoffs, because it's just simply not going to happen. So I look at it and think, well, if that was the objective, sacking him to get us into the playoffs, there's absolutely no chance that's going to happen. So was it really worth it? So it's a real double-edged answer, really. It felt untenable, and if he was a manager that had not weren't the 3rd off the rank, he probably would have been sacked sooner. But on the flip side, we can't keep going through managers so consistently without giving them time to do what they want to do. And I feel that if we had given him enough time and weeded out enough players, that things would have changed. And I don't think that's any different with John Coleman, to be completely honest. I think in 6 months' time, when he gets to the end of this whole scenario, where we're in the summer, I think we're going to be having. I hope they give Coleman the job for longer, for the exact reasons I've just said, really, as to why I'd let Bonner have it for longer. But I hope we look back and see that recovery has been made and that we're doing better. But I just don't think it's going to happen, and that's nothing on John Coleman.
No, I get that, and we'll talk about John Coleman in a minute, because obviously it is just 4 games. It is 360 minutes of football. I mean, we've all got opinions on what we've seen, but it's a very small segment size, isn't it, Reece? What have you got to add on the Mark Bonner situation? And I'm sure we will talk about the playing squad shortly. But do you agree with what Reece, Jack is? It's just a mess, isn't it? I think is the easiest way to sum it up. But if you can try and sum it up with some more detail, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with anything that Jack said, to be honest. It it was a shame that obviously it didn't. Well, I say it didn't work out. Like Jack said, it could have done in time, but obviously the way we operate at the moment is that we don't leave managers in place for long enough to find out if it's ever going to work. But there was a lot I liked about him as a character. Um, and I had quite high hopes for him when he was given the job in the summer. But I I can't disagree that I think in the end the club were left in a position where they didn't have an awful lot of choice, because sort of a bad run of results is one thing, but you've touched on the Bromley game there, the level of performance in some of the games, Colchester as well, um, was frankly unacceptable. And I suppose the club felt like it got to that point where something has to give. At that point in time, can't be the players. The only thing that's left to sort of roll with in terms of the dice is the manager. I think we all knew after that Bromley home game that it was very, very unlikely he was going to do another game. Turned out he probably would have done had the Chesterfield away game not been called off, because it was in such close proximity to the Bromley one. But I feel for him a little bit, because I think he knew what the issues were. I think he translated that to us, that he knew what the issues were. Some people took umbrage to his press conferences and stuff, but I thought 99% of the time what he said was the truth. And whether people can argue it's stuff he should or shouldn't have said about the players in public, it's got to the point now with these players that I've got no issue with managers calling these players out for what they are. I think he knew the issues, but just like the two predecessors before him, and quite possibly his successor now, just not able to find the solutions with this set of players.
No, and I did a video immediately after the sacking of Mark Bonner, which was that Sunday night when we was due to play Chesterfield. So in the sense, that was the only sort of weird part of the sacking, was that we were due to play that afternoon. So would it have been done if we played regardless of the result? But I actually said, and people know my thoughts on this, man, I actually said I feel a bit sorry for Stephen Clements, because Jack's always been the one that's been very vehement in his opinions that this is the players that have constantly chucked managers under the bus. I think me and you have been a little bit more reserved and loath to say they don't care, but I think we're probably all pretty much in the same boat now. This can't continually be different managers all the time that are the problem, because like Jack said, you look at Neil Harris, he left us, he improved Cambridge before Millwall came calling. He got Millwall halfway up the Championship on a very small budget in that division. Stephen Clements, all right, didn't work out at Barrow, but I know some fans say, well, the difference there is he had no budget compared to what he had with us. But then the same fans also say that he didn't get any help in the transfer window. So it's a little bit contradictory when we spent rumoured to be about $250,000 in January 2024, but that's by the by. But the bottom line is, I think we're all agreeing now that there's too many common denominators, and they're all part of the playing staff. And I think I've written on X a few times and said it on match day review shows that I think it was like at least a dozen players have now seen off 3 football managers. It cannot be anything else than the playing staff, can it?
I mean, well, not when Coleman's, like you say, he's been charged for 4 games, and he is already using the exact same buzzwords as the 3 managers before him. You know, the talk of work rate, desire, energy, intensity. He's bringing that all up already, and he's been here for a month. It says all you need to know, that the root cause of the issues at the moment is the players. And there's been a lot of talk about it recently on social media, and I can't disagree that this is one of, if not the most unlikable crop of players that I've seen in my time going to Gills. And it's not over the top, as far as people may think that's over the top, but listen, I was born in 1995. So in terms of our actual league position, this could well be statistically the worst Gillingham team I've ever seen. If we drop any further than where we are now, which the way we're going isn't beyond the realms of possibility. And when you consider the cost that's probably been put together to assemble this squad, I think they should be frankly quite embarrassed at the situation they find themselves in the table. And I suppose the question is it just lack of ability, lack of confidence, or lack of effort? Or is it all 3? Because, you know, you look through the team and Hutton's got assists in this league. Clark's been promoted from this league. Johnny Williams has got goal contributions in this league. The same for Nolan, the same for Nevitt. So it's not that there isn't players in this squad with ability. Confidence probably is a factor. I'm sure it is. It's never good for anyone's morale if you're losing games all the time. But for me, the way I look at it is that if it's a team and a set of players that are really, really low on confidence, what I would expect to see is a group of players that run more than they did previously, that would look as if they're faltering through trying too hard rather than anything else. And I don't watch us and look at our players and think they're trying too hard. I think the opposite. I just don't think they try enough. I think they'll start a game okay, and the minute something goes against us in a game, they give up the ghost and lose all hope and intensity of ever trying to produce anything.
That's one point, and I'll come to you, Jack, to see what you think on it. I've never known a group of players, to what we've watched over the last couple of seasons, where the form goes from one extreme to the other so incredibly quickly. Like, we've got to sit and remember that we won 6 of our first 9 games this season, and then we've won three of our next 19. I've never known a group of players, in terms of losing one game against Grimsby after beating Barrow led to 5 defeats on the spin and a horrible draw at Swindon, a losing draw, if you will. We've then had another run, I think 3 defeats on the bounce after that under Bonner. We're now in a run of 8 games without a win, aren't we, since MK Dons on the 14th. And even in games, I've never known a team like that. The amount of times I've said on the Matchday Live this season, I'll be talking to Stocky or Boz or Ava or anyone, and I'll go, we started really well. The intensity, as soon as we concede a goal, it's like they've just taken 11 players off the pitch and just completely replaced them with anyone who looks like they've never seen a football in their life. I cannot fathom it at all.
I'm with you, mate, to be fair. I mean, it'd be interesting to know how many of those 6 games that we won, where the position of the teams are, because I can think of Morecambe and Carlisle being 2 of them who are in the drop zone. So how good were those wins anyway, would be the question. I think I've said it for a while, mate, I think they're piss weak mentally, to be honest. It's a combination of, can't perform, won't perform. That they start all right, as you've said, from an intensity standpoint, and it's almost like the moment anything goes against them, they just completely give up, which to me just shows a complete mental deficiency, really. Like I said to a few friends the other day that because they were talking about the fact that, what would you do if you had your boss on your back all the time during work or whatever, which is kind of what you could say is happening with the fans and the players. Well, I mean, a couple of years ago, there was a bloke who didn't particularly like me, who I worked for, and instead of just downing tools and going, I'm not going to do anything, I thought to myself, no, I'll show you. I want to show you I'm good at the job. Yeah, exactly. It galvanised me, if nothing else. And it's just, I don't see that at all from the players. There is a combination of it where I think that they're not quite as talented as we make out. Joe Compa's statement when we sacked Bonner said, this is a talented group. I don't think they are. I think it's just lip service. He's got to play for the amount of money that's been spent on this squad, but I don't believe it's talented. I think they've shown time and time again that they're not. The amount of goals we score is embarrassing. The amount of times we get back into games is embarrassing. The amount of times that we go behind in a game and they don't look like coming back at all is embarrassing. It's just, and I'm not, that's not hyperbole from me. Like I could be a lot more scathing here and bring out a few swear words, because it's just not good enough. And I hate being the sort of fan that comes across negative or jumps on the player's back or just brings people down. But there's nothing positive we can say at the moment about anything on the football pitch. It's just, and it's their own doing. The lack of relationship between the fans and the players right now is of their doing. We're a very patient bunch of fans most of the time. I think we've got some idiots. Other people on Twitter would call our fans out as if they're the worst in the world, which I think is absolute nonsense. We are generally quite positive and patient, but even the most mild-mannered people that wouldn't get on the players' backs like you are. I feel like you're more apoplectic than I am at the moment, really, about it all, mate.
Yeah, it's we did have to warn Jack before we started recording that kids do watch. Otherwise, this would have just been beep, 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 beep. some late night TV show. So I do appreciate that, mate. Let's talk about John Coleman before we go back to the players, because and we sort of did say before we press record that it might just be where it just becomes a frank discussion and sort of itinerary goes out the window a little bit, which is absolutely fine. I just want to go back to your point, Jack, about wins. Carlisle, bottom of the league. Morecambe, bottom two, lost again last night. Fleetwood started all right, but bottom half. Chesterfield was a good win, I think, playing with 10 men.
Yep.
Tranmere at the time were in all right form, but they're horrific now. So I suppose the only thing you'd say was we played with 10 men for half hour. Notts County looks like a really good win. Barrow, again, at the time looked like a better win than it is now. And since then, it's been really slim pickings, hasn't it? So I think we beat a Port Vale side that were top, but that were really out of form. And you'd probably say the best two results of the season are potentially the last two, Salford and MK Dons, Reece.
Yeah, probably. It's hard to remember them that long ago.
We're trying. We're trying to say something positive.
But no, like you said, it's just so strange that it sort of almost complete carbon copy of the start of last season, where we was winning games, not letting goals in, but sort of we was riding along with it. I think at the same time, in the back of everyone's mind, it was like, don't think we're quite playing well enough for this to be stacking up to the way the results are at the moment. And I know, I can't remember what podcast it is, one of the many EFL podcasts that are out now, got quite a bit of stick. Sort of, they spoke about us on their episodes.
That was George on the NTT20 podcast.
Yeah, basically said their underlying numbers suggest that this isn't sustainable, and lo and behold, that's probably why they talk about it for a living. Turned out that they were right. And no, I mean, I agree with Jack completely when he sort of talks about supporters, and you know, there's been a lot of sort of debate and argument between supporters at the moment about getting behind the team, not getting behind the team, and I can't disagree with Jack. I think generally as a fan base, we've been incredibly patient when for half a season in the second half of, was it 22-23 under Harris, when we signed all the players when Galinson came in. Aside from that, this has been 4 years pretty much of underwhelming, uninspiring, no scoring dross. And at some point, people have to accept and expect that is going to eventually vent itself when it's been built up for that long. And I think it's only been since that Bromley game, really, wasn't it? I think that was the tipping point where the chance about players not being fit to wear the shirt and stuff comes out. And people can say it doesn't help the players or whatever they like, but there's probably double figures of these that have played under the last three, and now the fourth manager.
There's a couple a couple that even got relegated under Steve Evans as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I say, mate, it's not an irrational. We're not acting irrationally, is what I would say. They've been lucky that we've not been more on their backs than we are now. And now, like Reece says, it's just a vent of so long of just continuous crap. And I wouldn't mind if we were crap, right? And that was just the line that we took here, because under Neil Harris in the first half of that season in League Two, we were just straight up crap. We weren't poor in terms of. But that
bunch of players tried a lot harder than what we're getting now.
Yes,
but we knew we were scraping the barrel. We were getting players that nobody. I mean, no disrespect to him, but we celebrated Mika Mandron at the time as being a decent signing, and no disrespect to Mika, he's not scored a lot of goals throughout his career. He's gone to play for St Mirren in the SPL. Good luck to the fella, but we were taking that as a good signing. We knew they weren't very good, but at least they, to coin the phrase that I've used a lot, at least they played for the badge on the front. They weren't just interested in the name on the back, were they?
No, I don't think they were. I don't think they were like blood and thunder for the badge, like say a Pulis team, like a Hesson, Smith, and all them types of players. They and I don't think a modern footballer actually completely is, to be fair. No. But which is a not a great indictment of the modern day footballer. But this lot just looked totally disinterested, mate. Like they I don't know. It's almost as if this is a hobby for them and not their job. It's like, so even put aside the fact that you're not playing for us and you don't particularly like us as fans, is what it seems like, and vice versa. At least play for yourself, for God's sake. Like, there's going to be some of them that are going to end up on the scrap heap because of how bad they are here. And that's my concern, though, moving forward, is what's recruitment going to be like going forward? Because this is a graveyard for players at the moment. You come here, your careers, even the loan players we've brought in, like Morgan, he on paper he looks excellent, but when the moment we signed him, I thought, right, we've ruined him. That was my immediate thought that before we'd even kicked a ball for us.
I've said it 3 or 4 times this season, I think, on Matchday Lives. We could sign Harry Kane and Erling Haaland and play 2 up top like everyone wants, and we turn them into 3-goal-a-season strikers. That's just what we do to football players, unfortunately, for some reason. I think there's been talk, are we cursed and all that type of thing, but...
Well, this goes back then, mate, so I suppose to what can we do as fans, right? And as much as I can't stand these players and feel that they deserve as much crap as they're getting, I feel like we need to be the better people here. And it needs to be kind of a call to arms of, for the next 4 months or 3 months, let's do everything in our power to not get on their backs, back them, create some noise in the stadium. And if we still walk away from the next few months and we've done, for want of a better word, shit, that's going to be one of my swear words, mate. It would be, for me, at least we can look ourselves in the mirror
Change your settings on YouTube video.
There was a few swear words in the last one. It was no, for me, it would be, I'd look at it like that and just think, let's do our best to get behind them, even if we don't necessarily want to. And we've
got no choice
in the mirror. Yeah,
we've got no choice now because the window's shut. We're relying on this bunch of players to get us out of this pickle that we're in, aren't we?
Yeah, which I find funny as well. Like, again, I said it earlier, that the idea that Coleman's been brought in to get us in the playoffs, if that was the reason behind sacking Bonner, it was a nonsense decision because it's just simply not going to happen with the start he's had, which I don't blame on him. The recruitment that's happened isn't conducive, I don't think, to playoffs. And the players don't care enough to be able to want to do it. We're 15 points behind. We're in a relegation battle. I don't think we'll go down.
No.
But we've got more chance of going down than going up.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the fact that I'd fear for us if this was 4 teams went down. And I've noticed today that there's been talks about 3 up, 3 down from the National League. So we need to sort our shit out pretty sharpish in the next year or two if we're going to continue this division. Reece, let's talk about John Coleman. We've gone off on a massive tangent, which is absolutely fine. I don't mind doing that at all. But we've seen 4 games from John Coleman. He, I think, was quite self-scathing after the Grimsby game, admitted that he got a substitution wrong, which absolutely he did. Why you're defending a corner and bringing Johnny Williams on when you got Max Clark on the bench at 1-0 up in injury time, for me, was just ludicrous. It's almost like we scrambled his head after 3 games as well, like we do the players. But have you seen any signs from John Coleman's 4 games in charge yet, or whichever games you've watched, of shoots of recovery, of something to cling on to? Because Christ alive, we need something to cling on to as a fan base at the moment.
Probably be an unpopular opinion, but no, not really. It looks to me as if it's the exact same team as what we see under Clements, as what we see under Bonner, and that's not a slight on John Coleman. We've not won in the 4 games. We've only scored 1 goal off our own back. I know people will say, well, technically a goal's still a goal, but not being funny, an own goal ain't going to score for you every single week, is it? So
it's a sustainability thing, isn't it? Again, it's a sustainability thing, yeah.
It might do at this rate.
No clean sheet, no improvement in the goal scoring. So, yeah, people go, yeah, for 15 minutes in this game, we played really well. That was happening under Bonner. There'd be games, even the first game of the season. I remember for the first 15, 20 minutes, I was like, bloody hell, I've not seen football like this for ages. And we scored. And then we ended up with the most flattering 4-1 win you ever see in your life because we were terrible for the rest of the game. So no, I've not been overly impressed, but I don't think that's necessarily a slight on him. That's just because the players are not performing in a way that's going to look very impressive. Okay. Like you say, a couple of really poor decisions, which, like you say, he's owned one of them, that Williams one. I'm not being funny. The last 3 managers we haven't put Johnny Williams on the pitch when we're chasing the game, let alone when we're trying to see one out. And then admittedly, I wasn't at the game at the weekend, but apparently he played Morgan out wide, which is just like, what's the point of bringing someone in to start doing things like that? So jury's still out for me in terms of next season, but I don't, unfortunately for him, I don't think he's going to get the chance to put a run of sort of 6-7 games unbeaten together between now and the end of the season, because these players won't do it. And Jack's just rightly said the playoffs are a complete nonsense to even talk about the word. If Jack's saying we're 15 points off, that's us winning 5 games more than a lot of other teams. And at the moment,
they've all got to lose as well. Yeah.
Can anyone sit here and say with any confidence that we will win 5 more games full stop for the rest of the season?
I can't say that I think we'll win another game, let alone 5, to be honest, at the moment. I mean, we should really be beating one of Carlisle and Morecambe. And for my sins, I'm going to Barrow on Saturday, which I'm deeply, deeply regretting. that's one where we could potentially have taken 3 points in the past, but I just can't see the players getting a result anywhere at the moment, and that
then if you
does
lose
sound.
that, and then it's Walsall and Crewe next after that, I can't see us get anything out of them. So a draw, maybe one of the two at bet. I mean, we never win at Walsall, so you might as well write that off. And then Carlisle could be absolutely huge.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I know Nick keeps saying he thinks we're not in a relegation battle, but I think we somewhat are, and we'll know a lot more by the end of February. But I'm more worried about us going out of the league than getting out of this league at the top end. It's simply not going to happen. We are not going to make the playoffs. I think everyone knows that now. I think we wouldn't have made the playoffs when we got rid of Bonner anyway. So you could make the argument they made this sack in too late. It was like we should have either done it a month or two before, or we'll just give him the time. And for me now, I think we need to just give Coleman time. It's one of those where he could do poorly for the rest of the season, and I'd still give him the job because, well, let's see who's available in the summer. But like you said, mate, you could give Mourinho or Klopp or Pep this job, and I don't think they do particularly well with them. So I think it's time to stop sacking managers, give them some time and resources. We've got a bloke in charge of us now who is experienced. He's old school. He is a winner. We can't have probably picked many people better than him for the level, albeit he's only really done it with Accrington and no one else. That's my only concern. But we need to stop sacking managers now, mate. I think it's time just to give the bloke the job for a bit of time. And what it also does is it says to the players, you can't down tools for a certain period of time if you don't like someone. In my job, if I knew I could toss it off for a couple of months and do nothing and get my manager the sack every few months, I might do it if I didn't like him. You know,
I think
like
it's like Friday afternoon syndrome, isn't it? But on a grander scale. I think all subconsciously, a Friday afternoon, we get to about 3 o'clock and we just think, I'm not doing any more this week. That happens. I get that. But this is over an entire season. So if you put it into like normal layman's terms, it's like
3
us,
seasons, mate.
It's like us doing it for 3 years, just going, I'm not doing any work. And that's not acceptable, like you've said. What do we make of the fact that we've only given it to the end of the season? Because Jack, you just made the point about players not being able to down tools if they know this man's in for the long haul. But we're not in that situation, are we, Reece? So that's concerning as well. Because number one, if players stay next season and John Coleman doesn't, they might toss it off. And if the other way round, they might be gone. So still they might toss it off. So we're not in a great situation. And why do you think Joe Comper only gave it to Coleman until the end of the season? If John Coleman is as good as Joe Comper thinks he is to give him the job in the first place, why not give him an 18-month deal?
It's a really good question. Unless it's just simply where we're getting into this cycle of sacking managers really quickly at the moment. Do we want to give manager a 2-year contract and then start having to pay it off after 6 months because we sack him and then he can't? We've been very fortunate actually with the managers we've sacked, because I'm pretty sure there's this thing in EFL management that if a manager gets sacked, you only pay them off until they get a new job. And we've been very fortunate that everyone that we've binned off in the last 3 years has very quickly walked into another job. But that's the only reason I go. Whether it's partly Coleman himself, he's obviously had to move a long way for it, and it maybe he sort of could see the way things have gone under the last 3 managers. Maybe he just wants to see if it's really, really right for him.
Which is probably more concerning than the other 2 points.
Yeah. It's a really tricky question. It's a really tricky question.
And also on that point, we won't name who, but I know for a fact that Coleman and Bell are already saying that they feel that the players aren't up to it. But we've heard those conversations have happened round a beer in the media, etc., where they're already suggesting that there's not enough heart, the players don't care enough. So even they're in agreement, mate. So they need more than 6 months. I don't understand what they think they're going to do in 6 months. It's just nothing's really changed since Bonner's been sacked, in the sense that we've not really bettered the squad. So the players' attitudes haven't changed. So what are you expecting? It needs wholesale change in that squad. And thank God so many of them are out of contracts. I've never got to an end of season in my head where I've wanted it to end so quickly, and for as many players to leave as possible. I mean, we'll go through the list later, but there's probably a handful, I imagine, that I would want to keep. It's that, they cannot leave soon enough.
So maybe it's John Coleman that said, just give me 6 months then, which again is concerning because he might, it's not being funny. If he said that after 4 games, after 4 months of it, he's probably going to have had a gutful and think, no, I'll go back up to Accrington as far away from Gillingham as possible. What would you put on at the moment? Jokes. I'm saying it tongue in cheek. If you had the choice of saying you're a manager of Gillingham Football Club or you're unemployed, I'd pick unemployed.
I quite like money, mate, to be honest. So I probably would take the Gillingham job, to be fair. But again, it's almost a graveyard for managers at the moment as well, to be honest. Like he's experienced enough; he'll find another job if he left here. But we're not an attractive proposition for anyone really. And the concerning thing as well, if you look at this window, they've clearly made a conscious decision, I think, to probably not overspend, which isn't the worst thing to be doing, especially when the season's going to peter out into nothing. You don't want to, buy people unnecessarily. But I would argue at the moment that we're also not in a position that we're signing particularly great players either. So it's and when I say not great players, I mean it in the sense we've not pushed the boat out. It feels for a while. You could argue Nolan and Nevitt were, but for me, mate, they were one season wonders. But there's been some times in the past I feel where we could have really pushed the boat out on strikers or really got someone in that was a statement signing, and we haven't done it. And that is one of my concerns as well. Really, is are we still being a little bit too tight when it comes to our business? So I hope that changes as well in the summer. Like let's. I don't want us to break the bank, but let's push the boat out, especially on a striker and creative players, when I feel like we may have missed out on some people in the past that could have really made a difference.
Any time will tell. I think we've covered the players already without going back into too much detail and sort of stomping over the same ground. But there was an incident Saturday afternoon, halfway through the first half during the game, where the Rainham, I think, from where I was sat, did no more than voice their opinion that they weren't happy that we were playing short from goal kicks because it clearly wasn't working. I know you weren't there, Reece. Jack, was you in attendance?
No, mate, I was still jet lagged from coming back from Los Angeles, so I didn't go to the game, gave my ticket away.
Jammy bastards. Glenn Morris a couple of times had gone short to a centre half. A couple of times we played ourselves into trouble, given away free kicks, it had gone out for a throw-in. Rainham did no more than say, just get it long. Max Emer turned round, gestured, shouted something back at the Rainham end in the middle of a game. And I'm not digging out, well, I am digging out Max Emer because otherwise I wouldn't mention it. But everyone knows I've been a fan of Max Emer for years. But for me, he got that wrong. When you're in a rough trot of form like we are, we're winless in 8. Like we've already said, I don't think as a group of players we're likeable. Why make a tricky situation even more toxic, and even more so during a football match where we're 2-0 down and you're meant to be doing your job to get us back in the football match instead of having petty arguments with the people that pay your wages? Thoughts?
I'm in agreement, mate, to be honest. You know my thoughts on him. Yeah, and I think it's been the same with some of the other players as well. And I think just very quickly circling back to Coleman related to this point is that in a lot of the press conferences he's done, he has talked about how they need to connect with the fan base more. And he certainly didn't do that this weekend. Right. Just gone, Emer. I think it sums him up, mate, as a captain. And
then it was his birthday the day after, wasn't it?
Yes.
Happy birthday, Max.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, mate. I think he got it wrong. Others will say, he's a human being and he reacted, and I'll hear that. But you're the captain of the football club. You're meant to hold yourself to a professional standard, higher than a bunch of lager-louted football fans.
That's it. Unless someone said something specifically, they've been, abusive or racist or something like that. I didn't hear that, so I can only go on what I'm seeing. If that's happened, then almost you can understand it. But still, in the middle of a game, you've got to just rise above it and do your job better. And these situations don't happen, do they, Reece?
No, I can't disagree. Especially, like you say, especially from the captain, I don't think you can be doing stuff like that. And some people will say, well, maybe the direction to play like that's come from the management. But I'm not being funny. They're not stupid. They're paid professionals. Even like the Sunday team I manage on a Sunday. If I tell them that I'd ideally like them to play out from the back, and then we need to give away 3 goals from playing short, they won't need me to tell them to stop doing that. So just because Coleman said, "Oh, we've got to do this," I don't see why. I can't see that Coleman would have been averse to them, just especially with his background and people call him old school manager and those kind of things. I can't see that he'd have been averse to Morris just punting a couple of goal kicks up at the pitch just for 10 minutes, just to try and take some of the heat out. If it's apparent that every time we're trying to play out, it's nearly getting us into trouble. And this is the problem where, with how I look at the way we try and play, it's going a little bit off tangent, is that if we're a team really, really low on confidence, which we probably are, the results suggest that, we need to try and simplify the way we play football as much as possible. And this is why I've only been saying it for a couple of weeks, that for me, I'd be playing Hawkins up front every week, because it's not pretty, but at least we'd know what we are, and it'd be simple. And we know he can do his job to a certain, as long as he's fit, you know what he's going to give you. He's not going to give you lots of ability, but at least you can go long and you've got a focal point. At the moment, us trying to play football is silly because we've got too many players that look like they can't even trap the thing, let alone then pass it or make something happen with it.
No, I totally agree. And back to your Sunday league point, and I think I said on the review show at the weekend, which I recorded after the game, if you're low on confidence, if you're out of form, if you're not playing well, you don't want the football near your goal.
No.
Because invariably, when you're not playing with confidence, you want to have an extra touch. You want to have an extra second, which isn't conducive to playing short from a goal kick. So just get Glenn Morris to play it off Elliot Nevitt or Ollie Hawkins, whoever's up there, get as far away from our goal and start from 2/3 of the way up the pitch. Just play the percentages. It's like, for us, it feels like the worse we get, the more we try and play complicated football. Like you said, there's players that can't trap wind at the moment, but we're still trying to play like 60-yard diagonals and stuff like that. Just get back to very basic football. How many times have we said that's what League Two is all about? There's very few teams that get promoted out of this league playing tippy-tappy football or whatever we want to call it. You get out of this league by having two arsehole centre-halves, a big, strong central midfielder, an horrible brute of a centre-forward, and a big, massive, strong spine. We've got absolutely none of that.
No, I agree, mate. I agree. And that's on recruitment, which we're obviously going to cover. But equally, I think, people will lambast the fact that we're bringing him up again. But, it does go to show, in my opinion, that Harris wasn't actually as bad as everyone made out, to be honest. I think it all starts with that decision, in my opinion. As at the time, I thought it was a good decision, but we were chasing perfection, which was pointless. We've gone considerably back since we got rid of him, and it was an extremely stupid decision.
That would be my question. Has the football or anything about us got better since the 5th of October 2023? Absolutely not.
No, and no, even like me and Matt was probably some of the bigger fans of Harris. The football wasn't amazing, but the difference was we knew under Neil Harris, we knew what we were.
Yeah.
We knew what we were. We knew how we were going to play. And whilst we wasn't prolific, I feel like our record scoring goals was probably a bit better than it is now.
I think from the takeover to the end of that season is the only time since the back end of the relegation campaign where we've gone over a goal a game.
Yeah. Whereas we just look like a team for the last sort of 18 months that has got no form of identity at all. Clement's come in, played a certain way for a few weeks, and then sort of abandoned it and fell down a rabbit hole.
Went back to Hawkins.
Yeah. Bono, I don't. To be fair, maybe this is justified ways. I don't really know what the plan was with Bono.
No formation or set of players was there. No.
Everyone probably thought that with Coleman coming in, he's old school, he knows League Two. The first thing he'd do is stick to up front, and we're not doing that. So what must he think of the forwards that we've got here if he still doesn't want to do it either?
The thing that I can't get with John Coleman at the moment is because I looked at that team on Saturday, just to quickly touch on him before we get on to recruitment, which would be more fun times, was you looked at that team and you thought, it's 4-4-2. So you knew the back four, you knew the goalkeeper. And then to me, it looked like it was a middle four of Kambeni, Little, Agbanoni and Mackenzie. And I thought, lovely. And then it's going to be Nevitt up top with the new lad, Morgan, and you get your fullbacks on. And then we turn up and we've got Morgan, who's been signed for 6 million from Chelsea from Southampton as a striker, scored all his goals as a centre forward in Premier League 2. We've got him wide right, getting kicked up in the air by Jacob Badeau, whoever was at that side. And we've got the only player that's got any confidence at the moment, Jayden Clark, barely getting a kick. I cannot understand why Jayden Clark's not playing at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. Yeah, he has made a few questionable decisions, Coleman, mate. But it almost feels like his head scrambled a little bit already.
We've already said that, haven't we? Yeah, it feels like we've ruined him after 4 weeks.
It's I put one of my things I didn't cover, which Reece just did to a degree, and I then chirped in, was the fact that Bonner never looked like he had his best team or formation ever locked down, and I feel like Coleman's already like that. But again, I don't think that's a slight on the managers. I feel like they're so hamstrung by the team they've got in front of them. They almost feel like they have to compensate maybe with some of the decisions they're making. So yeah, as much as I'm sat there head scratching, I kind of don't blame him.
But for me, Reece, get the one player in the squad who's scored goals and played with confidence throughout the season. Surely you've got to find a way to get him in the team.
No, can't disagree. Can't disagree. Like, yeah, no, it comes back to sort of if you're low on confidence, form's bad. Not only do you want to simplify the football you play, but surely you just want to put 11 round pegs and round holes as a base and try and work from there. And it seems like no matter who the manager is, every week there's at least one who is just being placed somewhere for the sake of it. And I can't see why people think that's going to help us.
And also for me, and just on that game again, was we had 3 orthodox centre midfielders, because I wouldn't say you played anyone who's really an advanced central midfielder of Coleman, McKenzie or Little. But yet they still had like the ridiculous amount of time and space in the middle of the park. But I suppose that comes back to confidence, ability and attitude again. Anyway, let's cheer ourselves up and talk about January transfer window. 3 outs in the way of Luca Ashby-Hammond returning to Fulham. George Lapsley went to Bradford for an undisclosed fee, and Timmy Dieng has joined Cheltenham on loan till the end of the season, so we probably won't see him again in a Gillingham shirt. They have been replaced by the 5 of Asher Agbenoni, loan from Crystal Palace, Nelson Combeni, permanent from Bolton, and then Jimmy J. Morgan, Andy Smith, and Dominic Corness on loan from Chelsea, Hull, and Liverpool, respectively. I did a poll on X yesterday, asking people for their thoughts on the transfer window. So there were 4 options: awful, look worse, meh, fairly encouraged, or superb, just what we need. I think it's quite telling that 7% said awful, we look worse. Only 3% said superb, I'll have a pint of whatever they're drinking. A lot of it was in the middle. 42% said they were fairly encouraged and 48% said meh.
I went meh.
Reece, where did you go?
Yeah, the same. Not that I think I'm necessarily being critical of the club in that regard. It's you know, we've signed mostly players of a very young age that in a lot of cases are very limited, if any, EFL experience. So it's not, no one can sit there and say it's massively overwhelming. It's not, it's quite underwhelming, especially when I generally think for clubs at our level, if you sign young players on loan, I think you generally tend to end up with more unsuccessful ones than successful ones. So I don't see why people would expect all these youngsters to come and drastically turn our fortunes around. But that's it. So I'm not. I don't want to be too critical of the club on it, because I can see the other side of the coin, that January is always quite a volatile month to do business.
Yeah. Goes back to what
you
Jack
often
said about not spending silly money, because we've been stung before, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. You often have to overpay, and we're still suffering from that very first January where the Galinsons come in, where we had to spend just to stay in the league. And like Jack's already touched on, when I think if everyone's being realistic, the playoffs are a complete non-starter from this point of the season. What would be the point? We could have gone and bought Ollie Palmer. If Ollie Palmer had come in on Monday, I'll be suddenly sitting here saying we're going to make the playoffs. I very much doubt it. So I can see both sides of the coin. No, exactly. I can see both sides of the coin, that it's not a massively overwhelming transfer window. A couple of them could be quite good.
I like Agbenoni, what I've seen of him, and I mean, we can't talk on the last 2, they've not played yet, but yeah, Combeni seems a little bit sort of over-eager, I think is probably the politest way of putting it at the moment. He seems a little bit erratic and sort of just follows the ball a little bit too much, and you can't really judge Jimmy J. Morgan on Saturday because we didn't play him in the right position. Jack, my concern is that, and I get it for the reasons we've mentioned, like we're not overspending because we get stung like we did, and that would be exactly what we'd do if we bought Ollie Palmer, because we'd spend a fee or, you know, a biggish wage on someone who's 33, and in a year or 24 months' time, we're stuck with him trying to offload him on a big contract. My only concern, and it's slightly contradictory to what we've said because we've moaned about the playing group continuously throughout this episode, but we've allowed George Lapsley and Timmy Dieng to stay in the division. And as pathetic as it is, they've only scored 5 goals between them. But them 5 goals are 16% of our total goals scored in the entire squad. Are we perhaps too much looking towards next season when we still need to take care of this season a little bit in terms of the fact that we are plummeting towards the bottom 2? We've taken 13 points from our last 19 games. There are 19 games left. If we repeat that, we get to 45 points.
Which should be enough to keep us up, I think, to be fair. But it's a tough one, mate. It's one of those where if they've said they wanted to make the playoffs when they brought Coleman in, right? For me, that's not going to happen, as I've kept saying.
No.
It feels like a get to the end of the season window is the best way to describe it. Low risk, inexperience. What comes with inexperience, I guess, is a rawness and an energy, which is a good thing. But time will tell how this window goes. But it seems a bit strange we've let 2 goal scorers go when we've not really replaced them. I'd say Kumbeni and Cornish are probably the 2 closest to Lapsley and Dieng in terms of position, I dare say. In terms of who we've brought in, Agbanani's a winger and Morgan's a striker. So they're the 2 closest because they're both midfielders. And they do seem like relative downgrades at the moment. I get the long-term reason of letting Dieng go, old, on a high wage, or quite injured often. So that one probably makes more sense. Lapsley, to be fair, is injured quite often as well. I can see why they've done it. It's probably more on the injuries and the wage. But at the same time, if you really are genuine about making the playoffs, which we all know is not going to happen, but if that's your line, then we've not replaced them with playoff quality players on paper.
And again, it's not the decision to let them go based on them reasons. It's how they get replaced, isn't it, Reece? And at the moment, it looks like 5
time
sheets.
will tell. It's time will tell, I think.
For me, it's very much 5 sheets of paper trying to fill up multitude of cracks at the moment for 4 months.
No, it does feel like that, and it is like Jack said, it is the element of mixed messaging from the club that when Bonner was sacked, it was so that we can achieve our goals for the season and give us the best chance of doing that, which I assume was the playoffs. And then we have a window that doesn't back that up, as if they sacked Bonner and after the 2 games of Coleman, they probably realised actually this lot it's just not going to happen.
No.
And then sort of backtracked on that and just got into a more conservative window. But like you say, we've still got to put points on the board between now and the end of the season. And we've, essentially we're just rolling dice with these players, aren't we? Because they've got very, very limited experience at this level. And whilst it's not their fault, and I also don't think it's the supporters' fault, really. We've touched on how long we've been putting up with it for. But the way things are going, this is not in my opinion, this is not a good environment for people with very limited experience of a young age to be coming and playing football.
No, you could murder their careers.
No, exactly. So I'm hopeful Morgan. I say I'm hopeful Morgan is going to produce for us. That's if one, he's played in the right place, and 2, if we can create any chances. I'm hopeful of a couple of them offering something to us more than expecting anything. In all honesty, and that's the thing. Dieng and Lapsley. Yeah, it's probably the injury record is why we got rid of them, but at least you knew what they could offer us. We sort of knew what we was getting, and the Dieng one I understand more. And the thing, I was always one of the bigger fans of Lapsley anyway, but he was also one of them ones that, considering what happened to him in the summer as well, he always looked like he gave a lot more of a damn about it than
Talk
most
about
of the
attitude,
others.
yeah. Talk about attitude. I'm not saying they should, but him and Hawkins were told you can go. If anyone was going to down tools, it would have been George Lapsley, and he didn't. And there's a lot of players in that squad that could look at him as an example of how you be a professional footballer.
Yeah, totally agree.
As much as we're looking at the window and saying it's an underwhelming though, because of the inexperience, I've got to say on paper it doesn't look too bad. Kumbeni, I would say, doesn't look an upgrade on what we've had. So, and he, early doors looks average, but it is early doors. That's the caveat. On the flip side, Cornish described as the one within Liverpool's under-21s, capped by England. It's a good signing, really, on paper. Morgan is exactly the same. That's a very good signing on paper for the level in terms of the Premier League 2, the the scout reports, all that sort of stuff. It seems like a good one. And then Smith, from what I can gather, has done all right at this level. So I don't think any of them are terrible signings, mate. It's just a little bit underwhelming, I think, just like you say, based on the messaging of we want to make the playoffs. Even though, as I say, even though we all know it's bollocks.
Yeah, it is laughable.
If you are going to say that, at least back it with proven League Two players, and we've backed it with unproven but decent on paper youngsters.
Our longest unbeaten run since Neil Harris took over is 4 games, so playoffs is absolutely ludicrous. We didn't sign a striker, but we've covered reasons to why. The 2 comments that I found on quite amusing on X, and it's not to be disrespectful to the people that made them comments, but was, oh, well, Agbanoni and Morgan are going to be at success because Agbanoni's played in the Premier League and Morgan's gone for a fee of 6 million. Well, we know that Chelsea chuck money at absolutely everyone. I'm not being funny. If I was available, they'd probably spend a couple of million on me, and I've only got 1 good leg. And Agbanoni's played 4 minutes across 2 cameos at the end of 2 games. So come on, Premier League experience, do me a favour. But again, this isn't a slight on the players. I guess it's just a damning indictment of where we currently are as a football club, isn't it? The Galinson strikers, this will be fun. We've signed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 strikers, or what I class as strikers, since the Galinsons came into situ. Between them, in 297 appearances, they have scored 34 goals and contributed 26 assists. Of them 34 goals, 17 have come between Ollie Hawkins and Tom Nichols, and 14 of the 26 assists have come from the same pair. We have been an absolute graveyard, as we've already said, for front men over the last 4 windows. Talk to me, gentlemen, because it just tells you where we're at, doesn't it?
The tragic thing is
less than 3 each on average.
And them numbers are still higher than I expected you to say, to be honest.
There you go. There's the positivity.
I don't know what to say, mate. I really don't. Like, if we knew how to fix this, we'd be football managers, wouldn't we? At the end of the day, I don't know what to say. Maybe part of it might be down to creativity, and hopefully some of the people we've brought in this window might add to that. The energy and the creativity might be unlock some of the players that we've got right now, but I don't particularly rate Nevitt very highly. Wakelin's, well, God knows where he is. Hawkins, he doesn't want to play. Morgan's young, so yeah. And I don't, to be honest, mate, I don't think Nichols and Hawkins were great. They clearly, the stats show they're better than the rest. But
I think there's 2 ways to look at it. They look better because of the fact that we were so bloody awful when we signed them. And I think the expectation was lower when they came in. Obviously, it's easier. Yeah. We've said before, it's easier to get from 24th to 17th than it is to push yourself into the playoffs and the top 3. But I'm not being funny. If we could play them 2 up front on Saturday at Barrow, I'd feel a lot more confident than I would with Nevitt and Morgan up front.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do agree.
And we could all have a bet on a Tom Nichols header again. So at least we'd have some fun.
Well, it wouldn't be 80-1 anymore because they're cottoned on. I mean, he headed one in against Leyton Orient. Do you remember when the lights went off when Figueroa saved with his one hand down the bottom corner? Yes. And I turned around to the geezer behind me and was like, that bloke's just cost me £810 by saving that chance. But no, Nichols was always like a link-up striker, mate, like a fox in the box. Like a number 10 type player.
Yeah, I've described him as like a Teddy Sheringham type centre forward. He was one that dropped into little pockets of space.
Hawkins a brute. There are bigger brutes, but he is a brute. And I feel like we've said in League Two, you need a small man, probably. It's a little bit of a fox in the box, and you need a big shit house. And we kind of had that with a pair of them, and we've not then replaced with similar. I would say they've got progressively worse. Andrews. I mean,
yeah, that's enough. That's
ridiculous.
I feel for Nevitt in the sense that we always play him up on his own, so he's got no one within 40 yards of him, even if he brings it under control all the time. But yeah, Andrews has just been an absolute catastrophe.
But I find Nevitt, mate, 15, albeit I keep saying he's a 1-season wonder. You look at his record before he come here. People say he's a good signing. He scored 4.
I've written that down. Have you seen my notes? I've written that down. Jack's alluded to 1-season wonders, EN and JN. There you go.
Yeah, they are, mate. If you look at their stats, Jack Nolan's done nothing other than last season, and Nevitt scored 4 in 40 odd. I know we go about Tom Eaves and the same amount of goals or whatever, right? But 15 goals last season, it was a one-off.
I'd have him up front as well.
Oh yeah, so would I. I mean, happily all day.
And Dane Oliver.
Absolutely.
And you too.
I'd run as much as them, mate, with my gut.
I think your sprinting stats might be slightly higher. I'll just tag a self-service pump from the goal at the far end.
Hey, someone else said it.
Oh, we all smiled then. Weird. Anyway, game face back on. Quick quiz. Can you name the 12 strikers?
Should we take 6 each, Reece, shall we?
All right.
We've got 2
Let's
there,
start,
haven't we?
Nick, let's start with Nichols.
Tick.
Hawkins.
Tick.
Bon.
Tick.
Hurtado.
Tick.
Walker.
Tick.
Nevitt.
Tick.
Wakelin.
Tick.
Wiley.
Tick.
Oh, Andrews. Did we say
Tick.
Andrews?
Tick. You got 1, 2, 3 left. I'll give you a clue. 2 of them were in the first window under the Galinsons.
Morgan's one of them, right? So that's 10.
Oh, no, sorry. I've not included the last window. This is 12 before this window. So you've got 3 left. 2 of them were in the first window under the Galinsons.
O'Brien.
Correct. Tick.
Oh, what a shout that is.
Nadesan.
Tick. 1 more to get in the window. Came in with Aidan O'Brien.
Oh, Abrahams.
Full house. Well done,
Oh,
gentlemen.
great shout.
Tristan Abrahams had a goal contribution minutes ratio of 143 minutes, which is really good. Unfortunately, it was because it was only 1 assist in 12 appearances, but still. Tom Nichols, for anyone who cares, had the best goals per contribution record of 169. And this won't make too many people happy, but in terms of goals scored alone, the best goals per minutes ratio of all of them strikers is
Josh Walker.
Macaulay Bonne.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not counting Josh Walker. No, Josh Walker's was still worse. He only scored 1 in 452 minutes of football. Macaulay Bonne's came every 335 minutes, so he wasn't actually that bad. And if you chuck in his assists, his goal contribution minutes ratio was 239, which weren't actually that shabby.
So we're saying he's getting the team as well now, as well as all.
Did you see he set up the sitting ball winner at the weekend?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Then he got clattered by one of his own teammates. I think, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, someone absolutely ruined him.
I think what we've got progressively worse in every window, mate. And I've said it before on previous ones, but you look at the players we've not chose to sign. Ollie Affey, Alfie May's a bit of a different one, but there's plenty of examples where, as Ollie Palmer, where rumours have come about. I think Shamanga was another one as well. Although he went to Peterborough.
Paul McCallum. I've said Paul McCallum for years and years has done really well in the conference.
I feel like, as much as I'm going to slate Essen Tyler in this episode, which pains me to do it, I feel like he's probably gone to him quite often and gone, we should sign this guy, we should sign this guy, we should sign this guy, especially up front. And I alluded to it earlier. I feel that we are penny pinching a little bit, which is surprising given the supposed bounty we now have. And I'm not expecting us to go out and absolutely break the bank, but I think you need to with strikers. And it's proven with how shit we're doing. Like you at some point, you have got to actually roll the dice and break the bank on a striker that's half decent for this level.
Unfortunately, the only one we rolled the dice with, we actually broke the player, but he was broken when he came in, and that's Josh Andrews, 100k down the drain, isn't it? So.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't even think you have to spend astronomical amounts in transfer fees, because this is someone that we was linked with in Harris's time, and then he ended up taking him to Cambridge. But Lyle Taylor's scored 14 goals for Colchester this season. You're telling me that we cannot pay more money than they can?
Absolutely.
Even if just for a season, someone who's proven knows where the net is. You get him on a 1-year deal. If he's crap and you don't perform, you can get rid of him. I don't see.
Totally agree.
Yeah. The other positions, to a certain degree, you can possibly scrimp on.
Yeah.
But a striker, no. And you look at them 12 names. There's not one of them there that is a real marquee signing.
No, and you know, that blowing smoke up your arse, you was 100% right. You said back in the summer that Jack Nolan and Elliot Nevitt were one-season wonders, and it's been proved, hasn't it? They've got, what, 3 or 4 goals between them, 3 or 4 assists. It's it's not good enough at all.
No. And the difference, I would say, it does seem like he tries. That is the difference.
Michael
Whereas
Cheek, another one who's just been up the road for the last 5-6 years, scored 14 goals this season. Matty Stevens has come out of the National League with Forest Green. He's got 13 goals for your mate Harry Smith. He's got 12.
Yeah, even someone like Smith.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's plenty. My concerns is he spends too much time suspended, but there's a good player in there. Didn't we go in for him in
I think
the
we
summer
did
of 2022 before the Galinsons took over, and he came to us and then ended up going to Exeter on loan, didn't he? So, what could have been?
I think I think he was the one that we was meant to sign that Exeter took off of us, or was that or it might have been Stansfield, you said before, Reece. But
no, I think it was. I'm sure it was him. I'm sure it was him and Aaron Pierre were both in, and then got offered an extra 500 quid a week somewhere else, and I'm sure Paul Fisher told me that.
All right, there we go. Some inside knowledge. Fair enough. Can't believe he chose to ditch his roots. He could have been living in Chatham.
Exactly. Anyway, right, recruitment as a whole, because I think it has to be discussed, because quite frankly, it hasn't been good enough over the last multiple windows. So we're looking at, so the way I see it is we've got Joe Comper as managing director, and then under him there's an umbrella there's Andy Hessenthaler, who's head of recruitment, and then below him I think we've got Ronnie Jepson, who's never been announced, but we've seen his name on X.
Oh, really?
Is a Northern scout. Salim something and James something. That's the recruitment team underneath Hesse.
Two of them don't have any football experience, I think, from what I've seen.
This is the thing. There's this. We keep hearing this talk about AI and systems that are being set up to make players sort of a rating, a score, which they can then base on whether they want to sign players, is how I understand it with my limited knowledge. We have to give an honourable mention to Kenny Jackett. He's been involved in a lot of this as well up until last summer. And Kenny, obviously, we know has been battling illness, so I hope he's doing okay. We've signed, before this window, gentlemen, 31 players on permanence or on loan, excluding January transfer window of 2025.
Don't make us name all them.
6, 7, 8. Oh, he ruined it. 9, 10. I've circled 11 that I would say would be classed as a success based on what we've seen from them in terms of performance and what they came in to achieve based on where we were at the time. Regardless of what you two think, 30, that's a third. That's pretty damning, isn't it?
Yeah, mine's a lot worse.
Well, I'll tell you mine then quickly. I've put down as a success Tom Nichols, Timmy Dieng, Ollie Hawkins, Glenn Morris, George Lapsley, Jaden Clark, Ethan Coleman, Connor Masterson, Shadow Gee, Connor Mahoney, and Armani Little. That is it.
I've gone for Morris, Coleman, Little, Clark, Masterson, and Dieng. I don't think the rest could be.
I've put Nichols and Hawkins in because of the fact that if we don't get their goals, we get relegated.
Yeah,
that's why I said relative to where we were at the time.
Fair enough. I think if you looked at it as long-term successes, I mean, Morris continues to be. My rationale is Morris continues to be a good player for us, regardless. Coleman has his moments, and I had him as Player of the Year last year. He's gone quite downhill this, but I still think he's a steady player. Little's had his shaky moments, but broadly speaking, has done very well for us. Clark's been hit and miss as well, and it's taken time to get going, and he's been dropped again, but he's had a very good season this year. So I'd say long-term, he has proved to be a decent signing. Masterson, again, shaky season, but for the most part, he's been pretty good. And Dieng, outside of his injuries, has always popped up with a goal for us, whereas I think the rest, mate, a combination of injured, don't care enough, not done well enough. Yeah, that's what, 6 out of 32. It's pretty poor.
It's
so
Reece?
Yeah, I had Nichols, Dieng, Clark, Coleman, Mahoney, Little, Morris, and Masterson, and probably Lapsley and Hawkins in that sort of grey area in between, where had they have been able to play more games, they probably would have bumped into that successes, because when they were available to us, we knew what they could do, but just the injury issue. But yeah, not a great deal to shout about.
So I scraped to 10, so that's the highest. It's a massive.
Yeah. We've got a consensus of 6 because all of yours were in mine, weren't they?
And the worrying thing is that if we put together an 11 of the best signings we've made under the Galinson. I still don't think we would threaten the playoffs in League Two.
It's a good point. It's a very good point.
I don't want to do that. I'm depressed enough as it is.
Unless Harris was the manager and then we'd win the league.
Winning 1-0 every week.
I have to say, genuinely, I still love the Galinsons, and I'm not slating them here necessarily, but there's been some poor decisions with managers. We've not seen through on some decent people we could have recruited, and they're putting their trust too much, in my opinion, in people that just aren't living up to. How many managers are they going through in 6 months? Look at recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can go through as many managers as you like, but if you don't have the right players, people say it all the time. Clement said it, Bonner said it, Pep Guardiola's said it. If you don't have decent players, you aren't going to do well enough. And we need to not sign on stats, and we need to stop signing one-season wonders.
There's nothing better than the eye test, is there? And actually speaking to people and getting an idea of, because in terms of stats only go so far, don't they? You can look at a screen and it says, right, oh, Jack Nolan, 17 goals, 8 assists last season, whatever it was. But it's not going to tell you that when the going gets tough, Jack Nolan's going to give the ball away and not track back. And Jack Nolan's then going to walk down the tunnel at full time without applauding them people that are paying his wages. And I am digging him out because it really, really pissed me off at home to Doncaster. Like, really, really did. Like, I don't know if any of you match day live, you can hear him. Essentially, the Doncaster match day live from the half-hour point when they went 1-0 up is Stocky screaming the F word and how shit we are, and me telling everyone that they were taking the piss out of us. Like, and you've laughed and said, if it's getting to me, it must be really bad.
Yeah, that's the thing, mate. It's that they're playing poorly, but I can forgive that if they're either not good enough or just on a run of bad form. But this is lack of confidence and form. But the underlying reasons are the fact that they just don't seem like they give enough of a shit, and it's been the case for 3 years. It's constant. It's. I saw it a couple of years ago. It's just basics, mate. Just running, the energy, the heart. Like for me, they are absolute basics. And when you look at the ME7 podcast the other day, Leon Legg went on it, and I commented and said, because Legg basically said that without me saying it. I wasn't on there. Like, I heard him, and it was because Dave Miller said they probably get an unnecessary abuse, and I was like, I get when it's personal, but when it's based on them not running, there's only one person that can change that. You know,
that player.
Just put a bit of effort in, and it's not even just one person; it's the collective team. That's why everyone seems to love Marmani Little, because he's not a great player, but he's the only one that actually looks like he gives any two hoots at all. Like, I can't think of many others at all.
And I've said it comes back to the captain, and Maxima for me should not be captain anymore because I think he's sunk. The worse we've got, the worse he's got. Too often we concede a goal. What does Maxima do? Instead of handing out a good old-fashioned roasting to one of the players for not doing their job, or going and saying, come on, mate, and geeing them up, he's
just turns and goes to
banging,
the
sorting his studs out, picking mud out his boots or rolling his socks up.
And then when it comes to an interview after the game, it's just all the standard platitudes of,
we'll go again.
They don't give a crap, and none of them do. But the problem I've kind of got with Coleman then, to a certain degree, a mate brought this up called Mike, who and he said it on Twitter a couple of times. And Paul Fisher liked the tweet, by the way. It was, if you don't change what's already been and gone, why do you expect anything different to happen? So that's the one negative I'd say of Coleman here, is that he's not removed Aimer as captain. He's not really changed the playing personnel that much. So he's not done anything drastic.
No, because he said straight away, he said, if you don't work hard, you don't play for me. Well, I've not seen any of that.
Yeah, it's almost, to be fair, it's almost like he's got too many that don't work hard. That you'll just be left with no squad.
Yeah. You'd have to play 5-a-side.
I'm not blaming Coleman here. I feel desperately for him, as I have done the others, and I feel we should give him time. And I'm not blaming him for actually really much.
No, I feel for him in that sense. He's probably realised quite quickly that this is a much bigger task than he probably envisaged when he took the job.
Yeah. I trust that when we let hopefully all 14 players go, or close to him, in the summer, that if he is given the job permanently, that he will know the sort of characters to bring in. He just needs to be given the time to do it, and he needs to be the one leading on the recruitment, rather than the people that have gone before, who clearly have shown that they can't do their job properly.
Right, back to recruitment, because I want to ask a question, because I've seen Joe Comper get quite a lot of stick on X over the last sort of few weeks about his He's a commercial man, and I get that. He comes from a commercial background. But do we honestly think that Joe Comper's the one going out and looking at players and going, you've got to sign him? For me, Joe Comper just does the financial, the contractual side of this, and nothing more.
The ratification, the
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once Hesse or Salim or James or Ronnie Jepson's identified a plan, we've got him in the building. For me, that's when Joe Comper's involvement comes in terms of a weekly wage, bonuses in a contract, and how long a contract is.
That said, and this is more of a slight against Jackett and others that have gone before Joe, because he's only been in the role this season, but he is the guy that ultimately can hire and fire people within that recruitment team. Mm-hmm. So at some point,
he's got to make some decisions.
He's got to make some decisions, and he's a lovely bloke, and it's to his credit. But there are, and he's been ruthless. We've got rid of Clements and Bonner, so I'm not saying he's not ruthless. I'm just saying when it comes to certain parts of the club, I feel like Jackett stayed in post for too long. Mm-hmm. Hess probably has as well. When things aren't working well, stop making the same decisions. Change something else potentially. You know, as I've said, you can't keep going through managers and it be their fault.
What's the saying, isn't it? Definition of insanity. You keep making the same decisions, expecting the outcome to change and doing the same things. And that's exactly what it feels like watching Gillingham Football Club at the moment, unfortunately. Reece, I'm going to come to you now. I had this theory that, and it's been mentioned in terms of running the FA over the years, about instead of having pen pushers, you have ex-players and ex-managers at the top of the game. What would we feel about ex-players being the recruitment? Like, surely there's nobody better than to go out and look for a goalkeeper. Like, just to chuck a name out, I'm not saying it's going to be him, but like, if you're looking for goalkeepers, someone like Vince Bartram, one of the best we've ever had, or Stuart Nelson, going out looking at goalkeepers to buy. The same with someone like Barry Ashby looking at central defenders. You know where I'm going with this. Bob Taylor, Carlos Arber looking at centre forwards. There can't be anybody better at trying to scout a player in that position than them type of people that have excelled in that position. The only caveat to that is Andy Hessenthaler at the moment, because we're sitting here and saying maybe he's been here too long, and he's very much Mr. Gillingham from a playing point of view. But what would your thoughts be on that?
I can see the logic behind it. So as it's just put into us, it's just having that eye for a player, isn't it? I suppose. I mean, well, again, I didn't really have a position when I played football, but even if I did, I don't think I wouldn't feel confident in my ability to go and pick a player to go and play for Gills. But it just seems like the last 2-3 years we've just signed individuals rather than signed people to go into a cohesive, functional League Two outfit. Because, like you said, if it's just a case of looking at who scored the most goals and got the most assists, we could sit on Google and do that and sign players for the club.
I do every summer.
And that's the thing that frustrates me, is that when people criticise recruitment and fans on social media will go, well, you said there were good signings in the summer. Well, yes, because we're supporters. All we'll do is judge the signings on paper. We're not the ones paid the money to recruit them into a functioning football team and do research into their background.
And we are allowed to change our mind when they've got 1 in 20 in the league.
yeah, there is that. So no, it's an interesting theory. It is an interesting theory, but like sort of you both said, essentially it's got to the point now we've been through enough managers. Something has to change somewhere else, and the recruitment side sort of the next part of that. And for me, is it potentially too many cooks? I think we should give more power to the manager. I know it's probably not this. It's probably sort of we're going down this sort of Americanized route, which I can understand. With obviously the Galinson being in charge, but for me, the most comfortable thing is that the manager picks and chooses who he wants to bring in. If it all goes tits up, everyone knows where the full guy is then.
And it's not worked. Let's be brutally honest, Jack. This way of doing it has not worked for 4 windows. Our most successful window, looking at them players that we've all listed as successful signings, was the very first one under the Galinsons. And are you telling me that we had time to go and do this Moneyball AI approach? No, we didn't. We probably had a couple of weeks to go, right, let's go and watch a couple of games, watch Ollie Hawkins, watch Tom Nichols, Timmy Dieng, Jules Lapsley, and get them in. And since then, it's just been an absolute car crash.
Yeah, I don't know what more I can add, mate, to be fair. It's been very poor. It's a combination of signing the wrong players and probably not pushing the boat out enough on the ones that we should have done.
The key ones,
the key ones, which I'm mainly saying as being strikers and people that get you up off your feet, you know, fast wingers, quality strikers that can find the back of the net, whether they're young non-league players at conference level that are banging goals in, or seasoned pros like Lyle Taylor, Charlie Austin, Billy Sharp type players. You know, it's and you know, a lot. I feel like we signed a lot of injured players as well, which I don't particularly understand either. That doesn't seem to be factored into decision making potentially, unless they're just very unlucky. So yeah, it's been a car crash, mate, for quite a long time, really. And as I say, I think it's partly down to the caliber of the people recruiting for us, coupled with potentially us not pushing the boat out enough when we really need to.
I wouldn't trust us to spend too much money though, based on what our recruitment's been like over the last couple of years, unfortunately.
No, I agree, mate. But then at the same time, if there was say there was a signing in the summer, a striker that we could get conceivably who wants a little bit more than what we might be willing to pay, I'd roll the dice on that.
Oh no, I get that, but I wouldn't trust us to roll the dice in the right direction at the moment. That's my point.
That's fair enough. Yeah. It's fair enough. All very depressing.
And it just, yeah, and I don't agree with your point about players getting fans off their feet. Ours do that every week. Most people are in the factory by 20 minutes or going home. I jest because this isn't fun to do. Do we think there needs to be some sort of statement, just sort of detailing to the fan base how our recruitment works? Because the fact that we're having this conversation, I think there's a lot of confusion around it. And like I say, the comments about Joe Comper and his involvement with it, would it not hurt for someone to just detail an article that comes out on the website or the app and says, this is what Joe does, this is what Hesse does, and these are what the people below him do?
I don't think that would be the worst thing, mate. Although I feel like that Joe's already done this already on maybe actually on the interview with you. To be fair, broadly, I don't know.
I just think if it's talked about, people sort of forget and it becomes a little bit clouded. Whereas if you actually see it there in writing, I mean, I might be asking too much, but I just wanted your thoughts on it.
How I read it from what I understand is that the manager has the final say and will recommend people alongside the scouts recommending people. And the final say so is the manager, and then it's up to Joe to negotiate to get them in. So I think the criticism people leveled on Bonner throughout this season is his signings have been flops. Well, were they really his signings? I couldn't tell you at this point. So maybe yes, the answer is yes. I think they maybe could definitively say who's
the manager wants this player in, or the manager is given these players to work with.
Yeah,
because that does happen in modern football. I'm not saying so much in League Two, certainly in Europe and at the top level, but I just think there needs to be some clarity. Reece?
No, I can't disagree. I don't. It wouldn't do any harm. I think probably there'd be elements of the fan base that are probably like, I don't really care. I just want to see us winning football games. We've had enough talk. Let's just actually see some of it put into practice, kind of thing. Of
course.
So, but I don't think it would hurt.
But for me, it's just the fact that even off the pitch with that recruitment side, like when we've not spoken about the commercial and the hospitality and the marketing and the community stuff, because that's all doing really well. So there's no point going. But for me, the recruitment at the moment feels very much like us on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock or Tuesday, 7:45. There's no plan. There's no structure. No one really knows what's actually going on.
No, that's a fair point.
Right. Final subject as we approach injury time, because Reece has got to go out, which saves us all a little bit of pain. We'll be getting to that time of the season where contracts are starting to run down. So what do you want to do? Do you want to just run through the whole squad in number order? And I'll go to us and we'll say keep, release, or I know some are under contract, but we get it. So keep, sell, release, or not sure. Glenn Morris, Reece.
Check one. I down that I'd keep one of the keepers. Release.
Jack.
Keep, mate.
Keep for me as well. Romeo, Hutton, Reece. I'm just going to keep going around the same way. It's easier.
Bye-bye.
Same. Yeah, let him go.
Yeah, sorry. It's just not been good enough. Max Clark, Reece.
Yeah, I'd release him. I think I don't actively dislike him as much as some, but I'd like to think we can do better than that.
Jack.
Release.
Full house again. Connor Masterson.
Keep.
Maxima.
Release quickly.
Yeah, release.
Full house again. Some will be shocked. Ethan Coleman.
Keep.
Keep.
Jack Nolan. I think I know the answer.
But I don't think we can release him because he's not out
No,
of contract.
but
But
this is the trouble.
I'd be tempted to
make available.
Yeah, make available. I've got confidence in that Coleman. If anyone's going to get anything out of him, mate, it probably would be Coleman. But I'd let him go at this.
But this
point.
is my question on Jack Nolan. That season wasn't under John Coleman, was it? Under Jack Nolan, it was under John Doolan last season. It wasn't John Coleman the manager then. I don't think.
There we go. So retract that statement entirely.
We've just sold him. Okay, right. Reece, did you say as well the same?
Yeah.
Make available. Armani Little, keep for me.
Keep.
Yep.
Josh Andrews, I know the answer. Well, he'd be an A&E at some point anyway, so there's no point.
Yeah, release if we can. No one's going to buy him.
Yeah. Johnny Williams, release.
Yeah.
Aaron Rowe.
Let go.
Yep.
Yeah, same. I've not seen enough to think it's worth it. Ollie Hawkins, release.
Release as long as we can replace with a similar target man, which I trust that we probably will do. But if not, I would keep him. But based on assuming we'll sign better, release.
Robbie McKenzie, keep for me.
Keep, yeah.
Keep, yeah. Probably.
Yeah, I think this is probably the season that's probably found himself in a position where he can play regularly, which was, I think, the doubt we had over him before.
I would say, even over a little, he is our most consistent player.
Yeah, I think I saw this chat on X the other day. I think top three now for me is probably McKenzie, Clark and Morris for player of the year. I'd say Little's not in it at the moment. I think he's been awful since Christmas.
Yeah.
Mbeni, keep for me because we've not seen enough of him to make a judgment. Jaden Clark, keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd keep him. Yeah, I guess so.
Marcus Wiley, I might be slightly controversial. I'd keep Marcus Wiley.
I'd loan him out.
Oh, an extra option. I like it.
I kind of forgot about him, to be honest. Yeah, I do like what I've seen of him, I must admit. So I'd be inclined to keep him.
Elliot Nevitt.
Let go.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree.
I think you have to go that way because of the fact that he doesn't score goal. I feel for him, and we've already said the reasons why, but you can only base it on numbers.
Do you know what, though? I feel like if he went to another club, I'm sure he probably would end up doing well, knowing our luck. But I think his time here is almost too tarnished now. It's the same with Nolan. Like, minds are made up by the crowd. They have got their minds made up about us, I think. The relationship's not there. They're in a rut. Therefore, I feel it would just be best for all parties to just let go.
Yes, yeah, I can understand that point. Ewan Williams.
Release, don't see him.
That's the thing. You can't. It's hard. I feel for Ewan because he had that spell sort of November, December, and I thought he was decent. And then we've just not seen him at all. I'd almost, depending on what his wages are, be inclined to keep him and see what you can get out of him. But again, I could understand it if he went. Shadrach Ogie.
I'm maybe controversial. I'm not a fan, to be honest.
So that's a keep, yeah.
No. We paid money for him as well, didn't we? I think.
I probably would let him go as well. I don't think he's terrible, but I think we could do better. I feel like the profile of the centre-back needs to be a big brute, and he isn't one. That's
where I wasn't sure. You could maybe have him against like a Sean Raggett type, and it could work, but there just seems to be too many errors in there. I'm sort of on the fence a little bit, but if you had to say now, based on what we've seen, I'd say probably, release. Bradley Dack, I'd keep.
As long as he's in a position where he has been
to play games
recently, where he's not injured, he probably should be getting more minutes than he has been recently. We need to try and give him a chance to play himself into some decent nick. But yeah, as long as he doesn't pick up loads more injuries before the end of the season, on the right deal, I'd like to keep him around because you touched on sort of about aiming with the captaincy. I've thought of an example as well. Tranmere away, when Morgan got buried after about 2 minutes, the only player that confronted the referee about it was Bradley Dack.
It was the same at Wimbledon
he
as
is
well.
Probably the best leader we've got in this team at the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Actually, I said this to someone the other day that I remember. There's a couple of games where I felt like he's the one who's got the ball by the horn. He wants to get on the ball. He's one of the only ones who wants to make a difference, and you can see the quality and professionalism versus some of the others. So on that basis alone, I would keep him. But he needs to start more games. He needs to get fitter.
Yeah, it's got to be like Reece said, on the right terms. You can't be just getting 15 minutes of that him every other week. It'd be pointless then. Jake Turner, I'd let go and play. Yeah.
See, I said I'd release Morris, so I'd have to keep Turner. But then I'd want to sign the number one.
So you keep Turner as your number two.
I feel Turner's too error prone. I don't rate him. I haven't done previously. Morris has got an error in him, and he's not a giant, so he's not wholly commanding compared to other keepers. But with Turner, I expect him to drop a cross, to get beaten at his near post, and that's just not. And his shot stopping isn't amazing either. It's just not conducive to performing well as a team. Personally, I feel we need a more rock solid number one.
Okay. Right, the rest are all kids. Joe Bode, Sam Gale, Alex Giles, Tate Holtham, Stan Skipper, Joshua Bayliss, Harry Webster, Harry Waldock. I'd keep them all around.
Yeah.
They're all low risk, and to be honest, I know we're not quite safe, but I think we're all in agreement that we're not going to go down because Carlisle are absolute rubbish, and there's only one other relegation space. I'd start Sam Gale and Joe Bode regularly now and see if they can become first team players.
I'd do the same with Webster, mate. If
it's a case for that as well.
If we're going to not start Hutton, but it depends where you'd play McKenzie.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful out, because if you then want to drop Ema, you're getting a very young back four then as well, which would be risky.
Would it do any worse, mate? Would it do any worse? We're at that point where
no, I get it, and they're not carrying that baggage and that fear that the rest are playing with, and certainly they don't have that poor attitude. And we've said it on previous chats on WhatsApp and that type of thing. I just can't understand the omission of Webster, because he was really good in the 2 games he played. We didn't concede a goal, and we've not seen him. It's just very, very strange.
Yeah, and strange in the sense that Hutton got his position back when he'd done absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
Webster had done nothing to lose his place. And
Hutton had done nothing
to gain it. Yeah, which was part of Bonner's downfall in the end, I think. I mean, that weren't the reason, but that didn't help at all either.
And is it no coincidence that we've not won a football match since?
No, there's another one actually. Hutton and Nolan are the worst two for me in terms of attitude. I think the lack of running, shoulders slumped straight away the moment anything goes wrong. You know, just you feel like they blame almost us, and in a way, you know, and it's screw them fans kind of thing, rather than that galvanizing effect I said earlier that you should feel in the pit of your stomach. It's just there's not enough mental strength in that squad. I feel it's just that, yeah, they don't care enough. They don't have enough mental capacity to want to do well, and they're low on confidence, and some of them are low on ability. It's a very crap mix.
It's a great mix, isn't it, gents? I think we're done. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time more so than usual, because we knew this wasn't going to be a fun one, and we can only say it as we see it, can't we? People can sit here, and it goes back to the thing about you've got to get back behind the players and that type of thing, which we have, because like I said, we've got to rely on them now for the next 19 games, but we can only say it as we see it, and there isn't anything positive to talk about at the moment, unfortunately. So thanks to Jack, thanks to Reece for their time. Thanks very much if you're still watching at this point. I do apologise if you've
glutton for punishment
now want to go and drink or whatever. But as always, thanks for watching. We do appreciate it. Please consider hitting that like button, and please keep hitting that subscribe button as we get towards 3,600 subscribers. Hopefully be back at the weekend with Reece to talk about a positive performance and hopefully a positive result against Barrow, but do not hold your breath. And until then, most importantly, up the Gills.